Hello and welcome to Hired's first Fireside Chat. I'm Mehul, Patel, CEO of Hired. We're in Hired's San Francisco headquarters today. We're talking about the topic of recruiting technology talent. That is an increasingly important topic as we move towards an innovation economy that's powered by technology workers, and the ability to hire great technology workers quickly and efficiently is becoming an increasing success factor for companies. We've got a great panel today. I want to introduce them briefly. On my right, I have James Peel, Senior Director of Technology at Capital One. And next to James, we have William Tincup, President of Recruiting Daily. I'm going to have you guys do a quick introduction of yourselves, if that's okay.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for having me here this morning. So I work in Capital One's San Francisco office. I'm part of our technology group, and I lead a team that's looking outside at external technology startups and new technologies and how we can accelerate the adoption of that technology into the infrastructure stack and the products that we deliver to our customers.
Sure, William Tincup, President of Recruiting Daily. Recruiting Daily is a media play for all the folks that hire and recruit all over the world. We also do a lot of events. I've been in this space for about 20 years, studying HR and recruiting technology. So I'm a geek.
Great. Well, welcome to both of you. Just a matter of logistics. We are live streaming this. We will have Q&A at the end of the panel discussion. And so if any of you have questions on the live stream, please scroll to the bottom of your window and you can enter your questions there. So let's kick off. So talent acquisition, obviously critical issue. The latest research from the Bureau of Labor Statistics says 5 million unfilled jobs. You two both deal with that in different ways. Interested in kind of particularly for you, James, on Capital One's strategies for talent acquisition.
Yeah. This is a really interesting and important space for us. When we think about talent acquisition, it isn't just about the role of the recruiter or the sourcer in acquiring talent, but it's actually all hands on deck for all of our associates. We believe it's everybody's responsibility. So I think they're the best spokespeople for the company, how we work, the technology we're trying to build, and the mission that we're on. And the more that we allow them to go out into the marketplace, talk at events, talk at meetups, both national and local, we believe that's the most genuine way we can get our message out for the journey that Capital One is on, and the way that we want to use technology to disrupt and transform the products that we deliver for our customers. So we see that as being the most important component of our acquisition strategy is our associates, our own people.
How do you think about employer branding, William? What do you see in the industry? Because that's really what James is getting at there.
Sure. So I'd go back a decade. Employer branding wasn't a thing, or at least it wasn't known as a thing. We might have always thought about it. We've used different terms to the year of great places to work, best places to work, an employer of choice, if you want to go even further back. But the idea is that people have choices. They can go and work for you, or they can go and work for somebody else. Why would they make the decision to work for you? And that brand that we know in consumer branding, also in employment branding, I think a lot of what we see today is the true up. Whereas I would say early on in employer branding, I think we maybe put our best foot forward and kind of put a lot of spin on what maybe aspirationally the company we would like to have. And I think people are smarter than that now. I think the world is a bit more transparent. I think of places like Glassdoor, and I think of you've got to have a brand that not just represents yourself well, but true. Because we're selling. I mean, we're all selling, we're recruiting. When we sell somebody on the bid and they come in and it's not the bid that we sold them on, they're just going to leave.
Yep.
And so that actually creates a different problem for us, not just the churn and retraining and rehiring and all the hiring costs, but actually those folks all have Twitter accounts. Well, most of them do. And they're all going to be out on the internet. And now those people are going to then say bad things in the marketplace about us. Whereas before, well, hell, go back to the 70s, if somebody left a company, no one knew it. Really, your immediate family, cousins, whatnot, they might have known. Now, with LinkedIn, you change your status, and all of a sudden everyone knows what's going on. So your employer brand today, it's not just critical to manage it, it's critical to manage it and make it really authentic, almost to the point of repelling. So bear with me here. Part of your employer brand is to attract. Like, okay, that's kind of common sense. some of it should also repel people that just would never thrive in that environment. And I think back to a company, Rackspace, maybe about 2 years ago, 3 years ago now. They had all of their engineers blog. And they had this site called Racker Talent, and every one of the bloggers, or every one of the software engineers, they all had their own little mini site. And it was all about Mountain Dew and working 120 hours a week and just all kinds of crazy projects. And if you read that content as a software engineer, and that's not what you want, then you wouldn't apply to Rackspace. So it repelled you from that. But now if you looked at that content and said, I want to do that, it attracted you. So I think a brand, employer branding in today's terms, has to both attract and repel.
What do you think, as we talk about talent acquisition, beyond employer branding, as you think about sort of mission and values, where do they fit in your strategies?
Before we jump into that one, can I add one other point I wanted to think about from acquisition? A large part of acquisition is seeing the opportunity that is represented by a company, right? So as we think about training and development, we think that's a very large part of how we can attract new associates to our company. So we've been investing in, and if you think about the speed of technology change, so there's going to be 20% more technology workers by 2020. But at the same time, there's this really interesting data point that the half-life of a skill in a technology organization is now about 2.5 years. I think it was, got my notes here so I remember to get this right. The International Labour Organization from the United Nations researched that. So what it means is we evolve our technology stack and we continue to adopt new technologies. The rate of training and development that's needed for our people to be able to use that and be successful goes up. So like how do you solve for that? And one of the things we've started to do is we've launched actually just a couple of weeks ago our internal tech college. And this is an engineering design and engineering built training curriculum, which basically covers 13 disciplines to start with, including AI and machine learning, cloud technology, cloud computing, DevOps, Agile, and really like taking people through the full stack of skill sets that they need. And the idea is that it reinforces technology fluency to our users. And what I really like about it is that you can be tech native, you can be an engineer, you may not be an engineer. This is for all of our associates.
That's cool.
So it's allowing us to lift the bar as we know that this technology will be relevant to everybody. And we need them to all be capable. And we hope that that will attract new people to come to Capital One because they can see that it's not only the external branding, but actually the fact that they can develop in their roles using technology and open source frameworks, which they are either already building with or they want to learn more about.
Right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, look, we talk about at Hired, we've got 10,000 companies on the platform. So we kind of see what is attractive to candidates, and it tends to be what's always been attractive. Sort of one pillar is mission and values, and we'll talk about that. The second is personal growth. And then third is kind of employer branding, which is employer value proposition to the candidate, right? As you think about mission and values, how do you sort of talk about those? How do they get layered into your recruiting processes?
Yeah, so for Capital One, I think I didn't know this before I joined, and we are still founder-led. So our chairman and CEO was co-founder of the company, and he has a clear direction for the organization, and we're on this journey to change banking for good. So as we go through that journey, we want to offer the impact, the opportunity for associates to really impact millions of users, to be working on technology that's delivering products that can directly be put into the hands of customers and can improve the way that they use their money and bring transparency and simplicity and humanity to that banking experience. So we set out with that vision, and we want to make sure that all of our employees can understand why that's important and what they're building towards.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I'd separate the two into vision or mission, vision, and values as separate. Values today have to be lived. They have to be true. If we say we're a firm with integrity, then we actually have to behave and operate with integrity. If it's an aspirational value, that's okay too, but we need to clearly tell people, hey, listen, we're trying to be that firm that has great integrity. We're not quite there yet, but we're trying. That's the goal. So I think with values, that permeates everything you do. That's every interaction that every employee has with anybody. So those values aren't necessarily at the top, they're not at the board level, C-suite, they're every single human being that you have in your firm, and how do they live those values day to day in every single interaction with people. So values are kind of one of those things that I think we think that we can basically not hire to values. Like here's values over here, and we could go and hire separately from that. Values are actually the DNA of hiring. So when we do it right, we actually take all of our values and bring it over here, and we say, okay, this is the examples of our values. So here's people that exude our values. Here's some examples of what they do. Do you see yourself as one of these people? And it's okay if you don't. These are our values. So let's do that separately. Yeah. Vision and mission, for me, is about momentum. I think most of us, if not all of us, want to join a winner. We want to be a part of something that's really either life-changing, groundbreaking, innovative, going somewhere, better than our friends, whatever, however you want to define it, but just there's a momentum to the firm so that we can be proud about telling other people our affiliation. So when we're at a wedding or we're out at the bar or whatever, we want to be proud about saying, I work for, or I work with. And it's my brand and this brand. And I think that momentum, we can say it in vision, and mission, but I think I translate it and say basically it's your momentum. How do you have momentum, and how is it displayed?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. A lot of the conversation in the industry has been around the passive job seeker, someone who's employed but not actively seeking new opportunities. I think LinkedIn, which has over 450 million profiles now, estimates 60% of their candidates aren't actively looking for a job. How do you think about passive job search? Let's start with you, William.
Sure. I think with passive candidates, what I would say is we're all passive candidates in some way or another. And I think it's the relationship that brands are trying to build with a pipeline of people. So it's almost like what we learned in B2B marketing, where we basically create a universe of prospects, people that we would love for them to buy from us. Well, a lot of that language of B2B marketing has been translated pretty well to recruiting. So we create an active group of prospects, and then we put content in front of them, content that they would find valuable. Not necessarily content that we would find valuable, but it's almost like discerning the audience and saying, okay, what do you need? What content do you care about? Putting our brand in front of them in a way that they associate value. Like, this piece of content was actually really, really good. Oh, Hired did it. So that they're basically already predisposing them to want to work for us. And so I think that talent communities, talent pipeline, you can call it whatever you want, but this idea that you're marketing to people well in advance of them ever wanting a job, or you wanting them to have a job at your firm.
I can give some examples of how we're trying to approach that. And as I mentioned earlier, we really want to empower our associates to be the voice of the organization. As we think about like the ecosystems we're in New York and San Francisco and Washington, D.C., we empower them to go out to those local ecosystems and really be storytellers to what we're trying to do. And I think that kind of genuine, hey, this is what I'm working on and why I'm excited about it and why this is cool. It is a very genuine message. It's not a kind of marketing spiel. And so what we've done is we've allowed those, empowered everyone through the organization. So not just the VP plus senior executives, but actually straight out of college, you're coming straight out of your first job. You come into our technology development program, you get the opportunity to go back and recruit at colleges that you were at. You get opportunities to go out to meetups. So it's expected with all the way through the organization. And if that's the micro, the macro is we created a new kind of Medium blog recently that's augmenting like our Capital One main one, which is Capital One Tech. So there's a Medium blog and a Twitter handle that we're using to communicate authentic stories about the work we're doing. So less of a marketing picture, but about, hey, this is the way we're thinking about streaming data versus batch data. This is the open source technology components we're using within it, and how we think about that being leveraged and the value it could offer us. This is how we're starting to think about applying machine learning in some of our projects. But also, these are some of the talks we just gave at Grace Hopper last week. This is how we think about diversity and inclusion. But they're written by either, one I read yesterday was written by a VP leading our machine learning effort, and the next article was written by an ex-graduate intake student, I think, who's been here 3 years. So that diversity of views we believe is really important to kind of communicate the type of company that you could work at and hopefully allow it to resonate with as wide a group of people as possible, because we're looking to attract that diversity of thinking and be inclusive. A
quick follow-up. One of the things that we've learned in consumer marketing is how do you activate the customer to go tell your story for a restaurant, an auto dealer, whatever. And so there's all kinds of different advocacy programs and also advocacy software. Well, a lot of that has actually made it into HR and recruiting. Employee advocacy software is one of the highest or fastest growing subcategories. And so what does it do is it essentially enables employees to raise their hand and say really great things about the firm they work for. So there's all kinds of different advocacy. If you're out there and you're looking for these tools, type in employee advocacy software and you'll be able to find a bunch. The second thing, and it's really piggybacking what James said, is the testimonials that you put together from your employees, let them be them. Let them literally be them telling their story, their unique and authentic story, not your story, their story. And I think that's great in the written word, it's great in audio, podcasting, or video, but capturing those testimonials, that's what candidates care the most about. That's what they want to look at. They don't necessarily need a video from the chairman of the board. They need a video from somebody at the firm that kind of looks and sounds a lot like them, telling a story about how it's great to work here.
A real world example of that 2 weeks ago is we do on-campus recruiting for a large number of colleges where we hire from, and I went to a local university here, and we had a stand set up, and one of the people we just hired the week before was from that college from the last year. So if we look at who they were interested in speaking to, were coming up to our booth, everybody wanted to speak to him.
That's right.
And it was like, oh, whether they knew him, or it was like, wow, I didn't know you'd come here. Why do you like it? And I'm trying to listen in, because I'm like, this is really cool. It's much more genuine than talking to somebody they don't know. They were very interested in what made him make that decision.
That's right.
And it was the most authentic message that we could have given.
I mean, connect to that, James. We were talking about how successful your referral program has been. Do you want to share some of the learnings from that?
Yeah, this has been a really strong success for us, and it drives an awful lot of our new hires. And everyone in the company is kind of empowered to kind of not just refer people to our HR teams, but we have events that we run where you can bring friends in. We have kind of brown bag learning events, some of which are public, where you can bring colleagues in that you may have worked with before, get them to know Capital One, get them to see the building and the environment, the workplace that we offer. And all of this is with the intention of kind of helping communicate our mission, our story, our brand, and we find that collectively both the messaging, the media, plus this kind of localized engagement really helps to drive that referral.
So I'll say something that's actually probably counterintuitive. You actually don't want referrals from everyone, and it's kind of hard to say that to people's face. But truth is, what you really want referrals from is people that exude the values and that are high performers. That combination of those two things, those are the people you want referrals from, because that's gold. It cuts down recruiting costs. It does all the things that you want it to do. But if a referral comes from, let's say, somebody that's kind of satisfied-ish, maybe a C or a D player, that actually puts us in kind of an awkward position where we have to take the referral, go out to the marketplace, take them through the whole process, and then say no, because we don't want to hire them, which then sets all kinds of morale issues in place. So advice I would give practitioners is you've got to discern two different things. One is the value side, which is really critical, who exudes our values, and who's a high performer. And the combination of those two things, that's who you should get referrals from, not everyone.
Makes a lot of sense. So hiring software engineers, hardest thing that many of us are engaged in right now. Here particularly, James, I'm interested in your view. When you're in technology kind of centers like the Bay Area and the other areas you're in, how do you compete with startups to get the best tech talent? We've talked about some of the acquisition strategies, but what are the nuts and bolts of kind of your value proposition there?
So it's hard, right? I mean, there's a lot of competition in markets like San Francisco, like New York, DC. So we know that. I talked about our mission and what we're doing at a high level is an important part to communicate. But also we want to make sure that it's a level playing field. So the tooling, the technology we offer our associates are the same as what you would get in a startup. So we work heavily with the public cloud. So we use AWS as one provider, and that's what we would expect people to be looking for coming out of college or looking for challenging work environments. We use GitHub, we use Slack as a collaboration tool. So we're trying to make the right choices with the leading edge collaboration and technology infrastructure tools. And most importantly, we're not asking people to join our organization and learn legacy proprietary languages that will not be useful for them in their future career. We recognize that open source is the way forward here, and so we're open source first as a company, and that we will train and develop your skills within Capital One, which we expect will be portable with you for the rest of your career as they evolve. So we think those messages are really key to kind of attracting talent and differentiating our brand. One of the things we've started doing, which is I think is quite interesting, is something called Capital One's Developer Academy. And basically this is a training initiative that allows us to recruit across a variety of analytical majors out of college and immerse them in a training program for 6 months where they get the principles of Agile, AWS, DevOps, design thinking, front and back end development. And upon graduation, what they do is we move them into our technology development program. So it kind of takes them out of that, trains them in some core computer science skills, and then allows them to join our technology development program, which is like a 2-year rotational program, where they go and work in 2 different segments over the first 2 years of their career. So we're seeing how do we attract analytical talent which may not have done a primary computer science degree that we can then also bring into the organization and help train them.
So there's nothing easy, and I don't think there's a magic bullet. Unfortunately, I do believe it's a game of training and development and putting people on a career path. So in some ways, we are kind of going backwards in time, where people under 30, I will not say the word millennials, I promise, but people under 30 actually want their skills to be developed. And recruiters have historically never really had to have a great story there. It's usually something past onboarding. So a recruiter's job is to get them in, take them to onboarding, and then HR kind of gets involved as training and development, learning, and all of those things. We can't hire that talent if we don't have a great skills development strategy. Yeah. So we're actually pulling some things from HR and learning and development, pulling it up into talent acquisition, saying they won't come to an interview if we don't have a good story. So I think we're going to have to actually work with it's actually going to create some friction, but we're going to have to actually work collaboratively with learning and development and HR and pull that conversation forward. What are we actually going to do? What's the plan? This person's coming in, we want them, they want us, everything's been set, but they're not going to say yes to the offer letter until we have a plan, a rock solid plan on skill development. So that's one thing. Second thing is internal mobility, or what happens next. Whereas 20 years ago, you would have never asked a question in an interview, what's next? It would have actually been considered rude in some ways, in some circles. Here, it's common. I mean, it's actually table stakes. When you go to an interview, it's like, hey, this is cool, it's great, 12 months, 18 months, I get it. What's after this? Yeah. What's next? Which again, recruiters historically have never had to have an internal mobility conversation or strategy. So you got to pull that conversation from HR, which, by the way, HR is not great at internal mobility. So there's going to be a rub there that we have to get, as talent acquisition professionals, we have to get great at having those conversations, or we're just not going to be able to attract the talent.
And isn't that like, if you're looking for a job now, that's one of the key questions you should be asking is, great, I'm looking at this role, what is your development path? That's right. Where could I expect to be in 5 years? Can you point to others who have been on those development paths that I can meet with? Because I think that, there is the hearing the marketing, hearing the high level message, and then going, show me what how are other people in your organization doing that? How is this real?
If I want to get to here, what do I got to do, experiences wise? Yeah. There's a software play in London that for technology plays, it looks at the languages that you want to learn, and how do you want to spend your time, and what projects do you want to work on. And that's the only 3 questions it asks a developer. Those 3 questions. Yeah. And it asks the recruiters the exact same questions, And so it's doing a matching based on those 3 things, but that's it. I mean, for technical talent, it actually is fairly simple. Now it's alignment of those things and what they want and what the company wants is that's the harder part.
Yeah, I mean, look, when we see candidates and they're obviously making these choices between sort of larger, more established companies like Capital One and startups, it does come down to two simple things, right? One is skills development and growth. And there's more sort of acceptance of asking that upfront. And I think that's actually a real benefit for larger, more established companies because you can point to paths, you can point to infrastructure and support. Startups can't.
That's right.
And then the second, which is tends to lean towards startups and bigger companies need to have a good answer to this, is about impact. And the fear is, is this really sort of bureaucratic? How are decisions made?
That's a good point.
And I think getting ahead of that, having those discussions, this is an entrepreneurial culture in a bigger company where you have support is going to sort of really behoove you. I think those two things are very powerful messages. Do you guys talk about sort of impact and the ability to kind of get that entrepreneurial culture?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. And I think and that's set from the top with having an entrepreneur as the
helps,
the founder and CEO and chairman that he's built this company over time, and that is still in the DNA of the company. And it's always been a very test and learn company, going back to the early days of Capital One. And I think as we think about how technology can be applied in that test and learn environment, it's still there's still a high expectation of we should be very iterative in our process of how we develop technology, the impact that can have, the duration on that, and how it can be deployed. And that's both between our technology groups and our business partners. So this isn't where it's just set for the business analyst, but it's actually for the technology associates as well to own and drive forward.
I think technologists that haven't exited or maybe are younger in their career, I think they would love an entrepreneurial endeavor from the freedom and impact. I think you really nailed it with impact. It's such a great word. But they also want stability. So it's actually really kind of an interesting dynamic that they want stability, like how are you funded, what does it look like am I going to come in and have a job? And I think the folks that have exited, maybe are a little bit more senior, they're actually looking more for an entrepreneurial, like, okay, if it's less stable, that's okay. But they're actually, I think that impact is a really, really good way of thinking about it. It's like, what do you want to do? What do you want to be known for? What's the bit?
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, I mean, look, as we get to retention, one of the things we see with candidates, I don't think it's generational. I just think that candidates are now more empowered to ask for stuff.
Fair.
Which I think all of us thought about. Maybe we're less confident asking for in days gone by. But they're starting to see the professional world and the personal world as not being these distinct things anymore. You go home and you don't think about work. Those two things are quite embedded. And so they're looking for these sort of personalized experiences, whether it's the kinds of projects that they work on, the kinds of skills that they will develop, whether it's work-life balance, whether it's flexibility. How do you think about sort of the retention part of this? Because, William, I think you made a really important point that, recruiting can only be so good, but if you have a leaky funnel, the people who join are leaving,
That's right.
you're running in a treadmill, right?
That's right.
How do you think about retention and trying to personalize experiences to kind of meet candidates where they want their careers to be and to grow?
So I think the topics we've hit so far are around kind of the vision for the company and employees being able to really feel that they're having an impact on the projects they're working on, and that they're using the most modern technology and they're learning and developing their skill sets. Another key component for us is that work-life balance and the environment that they work in. And this is really important because we want people to bring their best selves to work. And everyone's different, everyone is unique. And so having a flexible culture which allows each individual to kind of tune their work-life balance to them, whether it be I need to leave home later in the mornings, I have family commitments, I need to maybe work from home on certain days. This is kind of expected and empowering. It's empowering for the associates because then we can make sure we have this diverse workforce which feels supported, has allies around them to be able to not feel penalized in any way for having a balance of lifestyle and work that allows them to do their best. And we found this. We got awards around like the best place to work for mothers, best place to work for LGBT workers. We've kind of seen these awards come in, and that also comes to we'll have these great work environments that we design now because that's expected, and we've invested in that significantly. But what I've liked is they've been thoughtful on that approach to be where we have open plan areas, we have collaboration areas, we have quiet areas. Whether it's mother's rooms, there's different areas so that everyone can ensure that it's as flexible for them as possible.
Yeah, I think I would separate two things in the way I'd answer it. One is turnover which is a historic HR term, is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, in some ways, you want an element of turnover in every firm that you have. What you don't want is regrettable turnover, meaning the person that you would like to stay decides to leave. A high performer, high potential, you can call it whatever you want. So the ability of recruiting and HR to collaborate and keep top talent is kind of the game of talent. Now, juxtapose that with, we all have fingerprints, and we're all unique. And one of the problems that we have in both recruiting and HR is we treat people the same. So that candidate experience that might work for James doesn't work for me, might not work for you. And so we've actually got to get to a point in our life where we treat people the way that they want to be treated. We meet them where they are. So on the front end of that candidate experience, we actually can be an experience that's for them, about them. And we're so in love with standards that it kind of gets in our way. Process and standards, we kind of bump into these things like, oh, okay, no, we want to send an email to this person every two days or whatever. It's like, well, I know James doesn't like email. Why would I send him an email? Why don't I text him? So we're going to have to fall out of love with standards, which is going to be kind of a bit hard, I would say. And I think one of the things that we're going to do is that extends into the HR universe. So during onboarding, performance management, learning, succession, compensation, keep going all the way across, all the way to alumni, everyone needs to be treated differently. Talent is behaving differently than it did 20 years ago. We have to recognize that talent's changed. We have to now meet all talent where they are, or we're not going to have the ability to retain them. So we need to retain our top talent, and in order to do so, we have to treat them uniquely and meet them where they are, all the way through that entire value chain.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. As we think about metrics, you're talking about attrition. I think it's a great point, regrettable attrition versus non-regrettable. Getting back to the acquisition side, how do you folks think about metrics? There's been a lot of talk in the industry, I think, William, you touch upon this, about sort of recruiting is really a sales or a marketing funnel at the end of the day. And you have prospects and you have various qualification of the prospects through to a close, which is someone accepting an offer. What are the metrics you're seeing and you focus on, either at Capital One or that you see in the industry?
So I think people still use, and it's almost like they're ashamed of saying this publicly, I still think people use time to hire or time to fill as kind of a key instrument in whether or not the candidate experience works, whether or not they have enough volume in the front of the funnel, going all the way through the funnel, and then how long is the job open? And whether or not we like that or think that that's the key statistic, I just think that most people quietly, that's their statistic. That's what they use internally of like the job's been open 96 days. And if it goes to 100 days, I'm going to hear about it. And so I think that's time to fill. I don't like that. I think it's you could use quality of hire, which is actually a little bit further in the process where you're not just hired, but there's a moment in which they added value back to the firm, and what's the speed or the velocity of that. I think that's a cool metric. I like the retention of top talent is actually my favorite because I think if you can't do that, you can't do any of it correctly. But I think time to fill is still, unfortunately, the metric that most people use. I
mean, it's an interesting metric because on the marketplace, we see 50% of the top talent gets a job within 18 days.
Wow.
So, if you have a recruiting process that is 30 days, you're going to miss out on the top half of the talent already. So while it's imperfect, it forces people to take a look at their process, and then they come to us with questions about, okay, so how do we run a process that is quicker? And maybe 9 rounds of interviews doesn't make a lot of sense. Right?
We've been based on quality. Maybe the goal is to be based on speed and quality second. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's quality obviously matters. It's speed, and then it's sort of acceptance of paper offer is a really important one. I really like that concept though of kind of like time to deliver value. That's a really interesting because that gets that quality measure. That's right. Great. Well, appreciate your time. I want to make sure we have some time for questions from the audience. So if you haven't had a chance yet to enter questions, you can go to the bottom of your screen and enter into the form there. I'm going to take a quick peek to see what we have. so far?
And no one's asked questions.
No, we have some. Here we go. How do you get referrals from top performers? How would you create a process to facilitate this?
I'll take a whack at it. You ask them. Start there. There's top talent all around us right now. You just go literally and say, I want more people like you. Yeah. Because you fulfill on the values, you're awesome, and you're obviously really talented. You're here, thank God. I want more of you. What do you need? What can I do personally? What do you need? Yeah. And sometimes that's money. I mean, as brash as it may be, but maybe it's just like, hey, write me a check for $5,000. It's like, okay, cool. Yeah. But everyone's got different motivators. Getting back to that fingerprint thing, that sometimes it might just be, hey, give me another 5 or 6 days off. Yeah, great. Yeah. So I think we unlock that with top talent by asking them, just starting there, creating a referral program that treats everybody in the same way. It's not shocking that those things don't do that well, because we're treating everybody the exact same way. So.
Yeah. Just to add on, I think there's a compensation component, but I think more importantly, it's if you can elevate your top talent and you can showcase them within the company and also externally, as I talked about with some of the blogs and other efforts we're doing. I think that is a natural incentive for people to be messaging out to their community and their social network what they're enjoying. And if you've done a great blog and it's featured on Medium, if I was ever to get featured, I know I'd probably post it onto my social network.
That's right.
So that natural 2 steps is a great way to kind of have an authentic message of, hey, this is what I'm passionate about and what I'm enjoying.
That's right.
And if that doesn't sell
That's right.
to refer other people to it that they know, then I'm not sure there's much else you can do.
Freud would call that the ego. So I think buried in that question is that, do you know who your top talent is? Okay, so HR operates with the belief, whether or not you like it or not, I'm not in that business. HR operates with the belief system that 80% of the value comes from 20% of the workforce. So let that settle in for just a second. Out of the 10 people in your firm, 2 of them are valuable or most valuable. The other 8 are not as valuable. In Silicon Valley, when you talk to a VC, at least privately, it's more like 90-10. The belief is. So why don't you like, and again, I can't make you like that, and I don't want you to like that. That's the belief, that's the undercurrent of all HR and all of recruiting. And I think that we might not know with specificity who that top talent is. So it's buried in there that you actually know who your top talent is.
Yep.
I don't know, I think diversity is massively important to be able to have different points of view, which can bring different ideas to the table.
Totally agree.
Last week I was lucky enough to moderate a panel just internally in our office that was on Women's Day, and we had different speakers on the panel, both internally and externally, talking about how do you become an advocate for yourself, but also it was how do you become an ally for other people. So as we think about not only elevating the top performers, but ensuring that people that are performing well but maybe not getting the attention they need can be elevated by others in the organization. Totally. And I had approached this when the preparation for the panel was thinking about as a male, how could I be a male ally? But there's so many other alternatives, or other ways, should I say, of being an ally. One was making sure that if you have a team phone call every week, that's not at a time which is not suitable for some people who may have children to drop off in the mornings. Right. So simple things like helping people, give them a voice when maybe they feel that they are not able to do so. That's a really important point to ensure you got that diversity, and that empowers diversity of talent.
Agreed.
There was a follow-up. How do you discourage, and this is particularly for William, to his point about not getting referrals from C and D players, how do you discourage those referrals, or do you just filter them out?
You just filter out, or you don't ask them at all.
Yeah.
There's no, I'm a little ruthless when it comes to that. Don't ask. If you don't want that person to refer, don't ask them. Don't make company-wide initiatives. Go to who you think your best talent is and make it an individual pursuit. So how do you deal with them? You just don't.
Do you have a view on that as Capital One? How do you think about that?
So we do allow anyone in the company to refer, and then we'll put them through our natural kind of recruiting process. And we're passionate about having that diversity of referral opportunity. And then hopefully, you know, we hold a high bar to the talent we want to bring into the organization. If they're able to meet that talent, then we'll happily offer them a role.
Great. This is for James. Capital One's rotational program for engineers fresh out of school sounds really great.
Yeah, it does.
What does your organization do for mid-level or senior software developers? And what's the percentage breakdown for the different levels you recruit for?
So our training program, actually, the Capital One Tech College, that's for everybody throughout the organization. So whilst the Coder one was specifically for kind of analytical majors coming out of college, Coder, it's a Capital One Tech College, is specifically designed for everyone in the company. So it's not like you're just coming out of college and we're going to train you. It's like, great, you're familiar with Java or you're familiar with Angular, but we want to get you closer to kind of building out your data science skill set. We're going to put you through a training. So you could be mid-level, you could be senior level. And you'd be expected to adopt this. We're just launching this with a portion of our technology community, and over time we expect everybody to be participating, and then everyone across the company, which I think is the way it becomes even more powerful, is you're training people in different job disciplines out of technology, the impact of technology and how they can use that in their careers.
That's great. I'm a tech recruiter at a burgeoning startup. How do we balance a tough tech screening and showing a good culture, teamwork during an on-site interview for engineers? So this is sort of that balance of sort of the authenticity you're talking about, an employer brand, and the buy versus the sell of recruiting.
I think I think team interviews help. I'll deal with that first. So I think putting people in an environment where these are the people you're going to work with. Okay. Well, let's all ask questions. You ask questions of us. So I think in some ways, startups can win this battle because it just might be 4 or 5 people. So it might not be a large department. It might not have all of those personalities bouncing off of each other. It's like, okay, hey, 50-50. We're going to ask you a question. You ask us a question. Let's just try to figure out, because you're essentially trying to figure out fit. Do you fit us? Do we fit you? And if you fit, then it works. If it doesn't fit, we can still be friends.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have to create an adversarial or a problem. We can still be friends. And you know what? It might not fit now, but it might fit in a year from now. So I think that's one way, is to make the interview more balanced and make it less about us interviewing you and more about, hey, listen, you're here trying to figure out the same things we're trying to figure out. Another tactic I think that's useful is a day in the life, where if you get further along in the process, you basically say, you know what, you're kind of ready, we're kind of ready, but before you sign anything, why don't you just come and hang with us? And again, I think startups can do that easier than some of the larger companies with just security and some of the other things. Come in, hang out. Let's go have breakfast, go have coffee. You know, let's go for lunch, whatever. And see, again, we're just trying to make the right decision. Both of us. You are and we are.
We do a concept called Power Days, which is where we bring the candidate in and they go through a range of interviews in a day. So we're trying to, to your earlier point of speed, move as fast as possible, where there's an exciting candidate and we know they may have multiple opportunities. But also that interview process has a range of different types of interviews, kind of behavioral, job fit, more informal. Usually we'll do lunch, we get them to hang out, kind of see the offices, see that it's not just an interview room that they're going to be part of. And we try and give them, as much as you can in a day, an immersion into what Capital One would be like. So they get the softer insights into the environment they could be working in, to meet the teams that they'll be working with. And then a lot of the interviews will be with team members.
Something I just thought of is a lot of recruiters will bring a technologist to the interview with them. So technologists like talking to other technologists.
Sure.
And so a recruiter is kind of that Sacagawea between those two worlds. And so the recruiter will get in trouble if they try to pass themselves off as a technologist. That's when they get into trouble. So I think some of the better recruiters, what they do is they try to bring somebody in and say, listen, we all have our roles. I know what I'm good at. You know what you're good at. Let's just kind of get into the bid. And so they have somebody else there in the room that kind of helps translate what the person's breadth and depth. That's one of the hardest things about tech recruiting, is someone might have Java on their resume or LinkedIn profile, but you don't know the breadth or the depth of that experience. It could have been one Java project for 6 months. You know, you don't know, and so that's where other technologists can actually help you discern breadth and depth of technology experience.
Do you recommend keeping benefits, total rewards close to the vest and only shared with candidates, or advertised widely as part of an employer brand, even if that, even at the risk of losing your competitive advantage?
I think that's insane. Why would you keep something? First of all, if it's not good, yes, you should hide it. But I'm assuming that it is good. Like I have this psychological problem that I don't want to disclose on the first date. So, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
But if your benefits, I'm assuming your benefits and your comp is at least at market rate, why would you hide that?
Yeah.
In fact, I interacted with a firm that's on the compensation side of things, and they've actually got a widget that you can put in the recruiting process so that the candidates can play with comp and benefits and to basically make their own. Again, why would you not? Why would you hold that back if it's good?
Yeah.
If it's bad, yeah, you're going to bury it.
I mean, we publish our benefits, and I think that we obviously check and balance that to make sure we're up at market rate. If people are looking for the type of cookies they get in the break room as being a key differentiator about the role that they're going for, that's an interesting kind of like key decision-making process. I think it's about, are you bought into the opportunity, the impact you could have, the vision, and what we're trying to deliver here, the technology tools and the skills you can learn, the diversity of the type of people you could work with, and the opportunity to contribute back, for me, I think, are the real value.
Lots of interest in referrals. Thoughts on rewarding employees explicitly for referrals versus just building it into the culture expectation of all employees?
Again, I think that you build it in if you're trying to make it a value. If your top talent allows you to do that, that's great. But I think that going to them and just asking them what's the best way to do that. No, I have seen companies do this. They take a group of the top talent, put them together, and brainstorm, and kind of come up with, hey, we can do this a number of different ways. What is the best way to do it programmatically? If you want to do it that way, and that does work. I mean, because you're going to get some feedback in that session, like, okay, that doesn't work, this works, this doesn't work, etc. So it could work like that.
Yeah, nothing to add from what we talked about.
Great. Well, I think final question. It's put a smile to my face. For Mehul, did Hired select James for this discussion because of his terrific accent? Yours is also nice. So
Aww.
I think that was a compliment for you, if not for me. Yeah, it might have been seated. Who knows? Maybe your mother.
Probably, actually. My mum.
But with that, I want to thank James and Williams. It's been really terrific to get your insights and strategies here. Thank all of you in the live audience, those of you following along on the live stream, and look forward to doing the next one. Thank you.